Here we go. We're back again. Everyone, welcome to the other side of the coin. I've got one of my favorite football Twitter accounts. His name's Marc. He's actually a good friend of mine as well now through football Twitter, and I'm excited to have him back on. I did have him previously in our 12th Man podcast, but this is the first time he's coming into my channel. And I'm really excited to do an episode with him. First of all, warm welcome to Marc. Marc, how are you, my man?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you doing tonight?
Yeah, it's good. It's not night here. It's 1:02 p.m. on Sunday afternoon, so
right.
It's nice and sunny outside. What's it like over there? What time is it at the States?
Where I'm at, it's 11:03 p.m. So it's winding down for the night here.
Nice. I do really appreciate you taking the time away and making an effort to come to my channel. So thank you so much once again for that, Marc.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So, all right, let's get this ball rolling. Basically, today's topics are first of all, we're going to talk about youth players and their talents. So all of these topics basically to get your perception, and obviously I'll throw in my 2 cents and we'll have a discussion about it. But it'll be about youth players and their talents. Next up is the CHO Saga. Everything that's happened. Would like to get your perception on that. Pulisic's expectation. After that, we're going to talk about the double pivot conundrum with Kante, Jorginho, and Kova, who basically misses out. Do any of them, miss out at all? I suppose with all the fixtures that we have. Jorginho, the most misunderstood player, or is he the most misunderstood player? Just to get your thoughts around that. And lastly, if we have a bit of time, and I'm hoping we do, is to talk about Nicolas Pepe, obviously the hottest topic at the moment in football Twitter. So how do you feel about that? You feel you can rock and roll with that?
Sounds good to me.
Cool. All right, let's start. First of all, Marc, we've seen over the last few weeks, maybe a month, or actually, it's been going on for a long time in social media. There's a group that loves everything about the youth talent. Our academy. They get excited every time we get a new up and coming youngster, and they cannot wait for them to be integrated into the team. And then we have another set of fan base, I suppose, that are a little bit pessimistic about the youth talent. Every time they start seeing some hype about certain players, they get a bit irate about it. They're more inclined to buy internationally, as opposed to giving youth a chance. They've got a perception that we can't be competitive just by integrating some of these youth talent. So what's your opinion, Marc, in terms of all these? We are going through a transfer ban, and you can already see the different youth players that are part of our system at the moment. You've got Mason Mount, Reece James is going to come through very soon once he's gotten over his injury. Tammy Abraham's another one. We have seen snippets of Billy Gilmore as well. So talk us through your perception of our academy and youth talent in general.
I guess I would fall somewhere in the middle. I am one to watch youth games. Back when they had Chelsea TV, and I'm hoping on the Fifth Stand app. I rather enjoy watching the youth team play. We have a lot of fantastic players, and they play well together. As far as whether they're good or not, or whether they should be integrated, it's really tough. I know a lot was made about Sarri, but he's not the first manager not really able to use youth players, because Chelsea isn't a club where you would necessarily say a guy is going to grow. We're here to win. We want to win. So we need players who are ready. So it's very difficult for youth players to get in, because most of the managers we hire, honestly, aren't there to help players develop. They're there to win championships. And I can't blame them. When you're on a constant stay of execution, even though the senior players do mess up, you can rely on them more. You can trust them more. You know that they'll be in the right spot more often than not. So, I'm a huge proponent of using youth players mostly because I think that we waste a lot of money on buying marginal players or quote unquote bench players. So I think that the ability to use the youth players without having to, my dream scenario would be, as many world-class players as possible in the first team, and the backups are youth players. The Drinkwater signings, the Zappacosta signings. I think those are the things that ruin us as a club because we make 4 or 5 $30 million purchases as opposed to maybe two or one $60 million purchase and a four. You know what I mean? So I think the way that the loan system has worked previously is that guys go out on loan for a couple of years, they perform well, then they come back and get a chance on the team. So you look at a Mason Mount, you look at a Tammy Abraham. These are guys who have went out on loan and they've performed well. So even if we didn't have a transfer ban, I would rather use a youth player than buy a marginal player. I think that's the main thing that we need to do to take our step back to greatness is stop buying these filler players and just use the players that are quote unquote free that we already have in the system.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, to be honest, probably start of last season with Sari, probably didn't think too much about youth players and whatnot, but more and more as the season went on, and obviously more so this season with the transfer ban, I started to think, in order for us to be sustainable, as you were saying, we all know Roman Abramovich has invested heavily, and if you see the numbers, everyone can Google the numbers. He's still heavily in debt with all the investment that he's made with us. He hasn't started making money out of Chelsea, basically. And I feel this is a perfect way to do that. Integrate the youth where we think we have talent. So I'm not saying just for the sake of bringing youth players in, just do that. No, if they're good enough, and I mean Premier League good enough, then use them and fill the void. But if there's certain areas where we simply don't have a particular talent in, like let's say for instance at the moment, I feel striking role is something that we lack a lot of talent. Yes, we can give Tammy Abraham a chance, but at the end of the day, I don't know if Tammy Abraham is a world-class player. I mean, he could be, but I feel at the moment the immediate issue is in our striking area. And I'm all happy for our club to, ditch the whole youth, I suppose, notion and go abroad and buy someone, world-class, as opposed to, as you said, 4 or 5 $30 million contracts where none of them are good enough. For example, Mason Mount, for me, I feel like this kid is already shown enough quality for me to sort of say, he can be something. He's got the vision. He looks like a fine playmaker. So why go out there and buy, someone when we have someone like Mason Mount? Sure, if you're going to buy someone, fine, but there's no need to buy a world-class player to replace Mount when Mount could potentially give you that return, I suppose. So what's your sort of thoughts on that?
When this conversation has come up a lot about, could we buy a player? If we were going to buy a player, I would hope that he would be a world-class talent or world-class. Now, one benefit to having Frank, I believe, is I think Frank will take the time out to improve these players. And I think that's one thing that I was a proponent of Sarri with is, Sarri said many times that his job as a coach is to improve players and that winning is a consequence of that. Well, that's not normally what a Chelsea manager is. A Chelsea manager wants to win right now. And I see both sides of the coin. But, like I said, one thing that I like about having Frank is I think Frank will take the time out to not only win, but also improve these players. So when you have, players who play in a foreign league, say they play in France or they play in Germany, these guys are trained from a very younger age to, develop, and they see more tactical side of the game as to where, you play with Chelsea youth and it's a bunch of, amateurs. and then you may go on loan to the Championship, which isn't, the most glamorous league. So then it's, the players that they say, okay, well, the player's no good because he played in the Championship. Well, if he played in League One or Bundesliga, he could have done the same thing, if not more. And teams are more than likely going to give them a chance and train them. So I think with Jody Morris and just the whole setup that we have now, I think at least one benefit is that these younger guys are going to not only learn how to win, but also just learn how to grow as players.
No, well said, man. I think the key point that you said there was, the pressure of still having to win, I suppose, and that's been the pressure on a Chelsea manager, and this is the high standards of Chelsea, I suppose. We've always won silverware on a regular basis, so I guess you're right, man. We can't get too carried away with all the youth because we do need to win on a regular basis, but at the same time, as you said, they have to be given the chance, and it feels like Frank and his staff that he has at the moment probably are the right mix for the balance of winning and developing simultaneously. Cool. All right. Let's move on to the next topic, which is the Callum Hudson-Odoi saga. Now, this has been well documented. Once again, fan base is divided. Some fans think that he's a fantastic player. Let's not give him all that harsh words. He'll come around. He's young. The other side of the fan base, or the other side of the coin, basically saying that why hasn't he signed the extension yet? What seems to be the holdup? I mean, he's asking for the number 10 jersey. He's asking for money. He's, Frank has come out publicly and said how much he wants him. What seems to be the holdup? Like, this lad needs to just sign. And then we have the saga of his agent being his brother, which a lot of people are saying that, when business is within the family, it's not always the best mix. So how do you feel about Callum Hudson-Odoi, Mark, not having signed the contract extension as yet?
Well, there's two basic ways I kind of look at it. I look at it as perspective as a Chelsea fan, and I see it also as perspective as a human being. As a Chelsea fan, I mean, of course I want him to sign. It's easy to say, he's been there since he's 8 or 10 years old. He loves the club. He when he scored, you could tell he was so excited. He's come up through the ranks, and he should sign it and be glad to play. And I understand that to an extent. But as a human being and also an adult who's, been in the workforce, I don't blame him for not signing. When you look at the way Chelsea is set up, especially with the academy, it's more used as a way to make money. Why do people say, why do they keep loaning these players? Because they make money. This is the number one reason why. And Chelsea will also manipulate it to where they won't give you an extension unless you agree to go on loan. That's how we've lost certain players like Solanke and of the such, who just said, I don't want to be in the spin cycle of going out on loan every year. Look at a guy like Matt Miazga. Is he ever going to play for Chelsea? Probably not. Why don't they just sell him? Because they make money off of him. So I can't be mad at a guy who is going to use leverage when he has it. It's so it's so rare. And I know you can speak to this as being, a person in the labor force. It's so rare that you have leverage over your employer. And anytime your employer has leverage over you, they're going to use it. So I can't be mad at a human being for using leverage. The Bale situation to me is no different. People say, oh, why doesn't he just leave? Well, who's going to pick up that $600K a week, wage? Well, he should take a pay cut. You're insane. Who would take a pay cut to not live in Madrid and make $600K? The manager doesn't like him. If they wanted him to leave so bad, just pay his payout, pay him the money you owe him, and be done with it. I'm a very pro player type of person. So I can't blame the kid. I mean, who knows if Frank Lampard's even going to be the manager next year? It's Chelsea. You know what I mean? Who's to say that another manager won't come in and sign two 28-year-old wingers, and then Callum stuck on the bench. I mean, it's Chelsea. There's no clear-cut plan as of now. So I don't think it's weak at all. I mean, he has leverage. He wants the money. God only knows what Bayern has promised him, which has probably, forced his hand to say, okay, well, you guys have to match this, or I can go. So, like I said, as a fan, of course I want him to score many goals and kiss the badge and want to play for free. But as a human being, I can't be mad at the kid. Use the leverage that you have, make as much money as you have, because, as you saw Shawcross, I don't know if you saw it, the guy tried to make a tackle and tore up his leg. He may never play again. So, it's a job to these guys. They play the game for free, but it's every other minute of the day that they spend getting ready to play these matches is where they get paid. And let's be honest, the teams make so much money. I just paid $3.99 to watch a preseason friendly. So it's hard for me to say, well, the players are greedy and the agents are greedy. Of course they are. Look how much money these teams make. So if you can afford to pay a guy $150,000 a week, how much money are you making off him? It has to be at least triple. So 99% of the time, I'm going to side with the player because they're the ones who put their life on the line. And let's be honest, these owners are rich anyway. If they didn't own football clubs, they would be rich. A lot of these things are play toys for them. And I'm all for them to make money too. It's their business. But I just usually side with the player on these certain topics.
Yeah, and I've been a bit, I suppose, frustrated. I mean, just like you, I definitely want Callum Hudson-Odoi to sign the extension and continue on with us. I do see the talent in him. I definitely want him to continue with us. But having said that, I've been frustrated that why has it been taking so long for him to sign this? But in recent times, I suppose I've started to sort of see it more in the view of how you're seeing it and how many of other Chelsea fans are seeing it, is that it isn't easy, probably. As you said, Frank's our manager today. He may not be the manager next season. And also, I suppose it needs to be seen that the style that Frank is playing at the moment, which is high octane, high press, is that something that Callum Hudson-Odoi is ready to do as well? He's probably looking at Bayern and he's seeing that they play much higher up the pitch and they're far more attacking. Not saying that Frank's not going to be attacking, but Frank's system is going to be very physical to a player's body. All this pressing is going to start from the top, from the strikers, the wingers, the midfielders, and there's a lot of track backing and there's a lot of defensive attribute to it as well. So, someone like Cho probably is looking at that and going, this I need to probably just stop for a moment and just have a look if I'm actually if I want to be part of this sort of style as well. So, I mean, that's just one side of it. Obviously there's the money factor. And as you said, and these guys, they're running one day and all of a sudden, a massive injury could happen and, there goes their season or their career. So they've got to think about the money as well. I know a lot of people were sort of umming and ahhing about $100,000 a week, and plus all these other bonus offers in terms of if he does well, then he can go up to 150,000. And a lot of people are saying, oh, why does an 18-year-old need so much money? I myself was probably saying, what does an 18-year-old need so much money? But I think you're right, Mark. At the end of the day, you just don't know how long their playing career is. And, as you say, with the Ryan Shawcross, at least he had a career. Nonetheless, no one wishes that kind of injury. But we've already seen the scare of Cho with the Achilles injury. So, yeah, maybe it isn't that easy.
Would you turn down more extra money at your profession right now? Would you turn down?
No way. If someone was to come to me right now and say, Miz, I'm gonna give you an extra 10,000. I mean, when can I start? Yeah. So yeah, no, you're right. What's your thoughts on in regards to family members being agents, I suppose, as well.
That's a tough one. That's a really tough one because, the ways it seems to work a lot is that these agents make more money on the players signing deals and the player, in the United States, agent basically makes 3% of a player's contract. And where
Wow.
they make their most money is on endorsements. You get them a deal with Nike, you get them a deal with Gatorade, then their percentages go up a bit higher. I'm not sure exactly how it works, in European football. I know they have like image rights and, they have the sign fee, which is slightly different than American sports. But I think in any facet, it's tough to know to make sure that people have your best interest at heart, So how many clients does this guy have? I know that there was another Chelsea, a younger player that signed to Bayern that was one of his clients, So, if you sign for a giant IMG, let's say, a massive, place that has tons of agents, they have tons of players that are on their payroll. So, as this guy, he may only have 3 or 4, so he may be banking more on Callum. And I don't know what was said between his representatives and the club. Marina is a tough negotiator. Back when these negotiations started, things were a lot different. Eden Haddon was our player. Marcio Asari was our coach. A lot of things have changed since then. So, I mean, like I said, Bayern, from all we know, was offering him a high wage. They were going to pay $45 million, and they were going to give him the 10 shirt. So, as an 18-year-old kid, I will never say, well, what does he need with $100,000? He earned it. You're always worth what someone's willing to pay you. So if someone offered me in my job $1 million a week, it doesn't matter if I'm not worth it. The fact is you think I'm worth it, so I'm going to take it, of course. So generally, family and money usually does not work out in the best way, and I can't say for sure that the guy has got bad because he's getting $150K a week supposedly and possibly the 10 jersey. So, did he win? Then I guess you could say yes. And like I said, Chelsea has used the loan system to their advantage for years. So finally you have a guy here who says, I'm going to do it my way, and he wins. And as much as I'm a Chelsea fan, fair play to the guy because, like I said, these are the guys that work every day for this, and they bust their ass and try everything to make, money because their earning potential may be 8, 10, 12 years. That's a very short career when you spend your whole life trying to obtain something. So, I can't say for sure because God only knows what happens in these board meetings with Chelsea. They don't do things the normal way. So, yeah. I mean, I would say it doesn't work out, but if he gets everything he wants, then for him, I guess it did work out.
No, fair point. I suppose us fans should just relax and just wait for the good news to come down. And at the end of the day, I guess all of these, as more time sort of drags out, we do get frustrated, but sometimes we probably just need to sit down and think, as you said, these are not easy decisions in life. One hand, there's the money factor, and then the other hand, there's it's your childhood club as well. All right, let's move on to the next topic, which is Pulisic expectations. Now, you've been an American. Pulisic, is a fantastic player for you to sort of have an eye on, I suppose, in the upcoming season. I want to start off with something different in regards to Pulisic. I saw a tweet maybe last week from, I think it was Mod. I think we all know who Mod is in football Twitter. And it was off the back of, I think he was replying to someone else's tweet, and he was saying that he believes Callum Hudson-Odoi, his talent is far greater than Pulisic. And I sort of looked at that and I was like, well, that's a bit unfair. You got someone like Pulisic who's an American international. I think he's the captain as well for America.
He's captain a few times. They don't have just like one set captain, but he has captained them on more than one occasion.
Yeah, and he's played international games. He's appeared, I suppose, quite a few times. He's got Champions League experience. He's played in Bundesliga in the up against Bayern Munich and a few other top clubs over there. And he's 20, and to say he's a lesser of a talent than Callum Hudson-Odoi, who's not even proven yet, I suppose. What's your thoughts in regards to those sort of comparison, I suppose, and the expectation of Pulisic for the upcoming season for Chelsea, and how certain fans are sort of, perhaps maybe a bit pessimistic about him as well?
Well, I guess if you're going to compare on just strict base talent, I would say that Callum is the more talented of the prospect. I think mainly it's more of just I've seen Callum score more, or at least look that he's looking more to score, I would say. Pulisic seems more of a creator. I know he plays on the wing, but he seems more as a facilitator. He can pick the ball up from one side and take it, all the way to the attacking third. His final ball and his finishing has been somewhat questionable, but like I said, he's a young kid. He tries extremely hard. He's going to do, put 100% effort in. So if I had to say which one would I say is more talented, just based off of what I've seen, I would say Callum is more talented, but I think, like I said, he's more of a finisher. My expectations for Pulisic, I think the kid's going to come in, he's going to bust his ass 100%. Like you said, he's 20 years old. He's captained the national team. He's moved to Germany at 15 years old from Hershey, Pennsylvania, a place where they don't speak the language. He's a high character. The way if he talks and he reads, he doesn't sound like he's a guy who, thinks too highly of himself. He just seems like a down-to-earth kid who wants to come in and work. He cut his preseason short to come in and work, although he did have a month off, I think, right after the Bundesliga season between that and the national team. So he did have some time off, but, the guy still came back before he had to. So I think it just kind of shows his character. So, it's so hard to say what a guy is or not going to do at such a young age. But, I think the guy's going to do great. And the stage will never be too big for him, I would feel. And I think that happens a lot at Chelsea. Look at Morata's situation. The pressure can make you fold. We're a big club. So anytime we lose a match, whether it's the Real Madrid or Barcelona or Watford, it makes no difference. It's a big deal. And people will say, we shouldn't have lost. And to me, that's the difference between big clubs and medium clubs or small clubs, or however you want to, chop them up. The point is, when Real Madrid lose a game, it's a huge deal. When Chelsea win a game, it's a huge deal. When Tottenham, lose a game, it's not so much of a big deal. People say, oh, well, they don't have this, they don't have that. So when you look at, to me, not even throwing shade, just being honest, that to me is what a big club is. So I don't think the stage is going to be too big for him. I think he's going to do great. No,
yeah, agreed as well. As you said, the things that I've sort of liked about Pulisic at the moment is his attitude. Sure, he's cut his preseason, as you said. He's had a month off before that, but I still like the fact that he had a competition. He could have taken a little bit more time off, but he didn't. He came straight into the camp because he wanted to, get the ball rolling with Frank and get into that whole vibe of the new energy that Frank has brought in. And every time he speaks as well, he doesn't sound like a 20-year-old. He's so mature for his age. Like, he sounds like a seasoned veteran. He sounds like he's 28, 29. He's seen the whole world. He's experienced many seasons, which he has already anyway. But that's what I like about him. Even his attitude in the field, barely see him, drop his head. He's always, giving 100%. He's running in that sort of left wing area or wherever he sort of drifts around. And he's always giving his best. And I love that attitude about him. You're probably right in the sense that he may not be an out-and-out goal scorer like what Callum Hudson-Odoi is probably showing us to be. But he definitely can be a creator, which is still good for us. My biggest thing for this season is that we may not have someone like Eden Hazard, who's banged in so many goals last season for us, and obviously assisted many as well. But we lack that striker. But if we can continuously, I suppose, keep creating opportunities and provide opportunities for our strikers, hopefully 1 in every 2 chances or 1 in every 3 chances they're going to put it away. And that's more important, is the number of chances that we create. I do recall the match against Kawasaki in our preseason where I wasn't really happy about that performance. At the same time, it's preseason, but what really did sort of annoy me heaps was the lack of opportunities that we created in that match. It just annoyed me that sure, we could lose a match, but if we had created 10 clear chances and our strikers missed it, at least I could say, we're creating chances. Sooner or later, some of these chances are going to be put away. And that's what I liked a lot against Barcelona, where we created some really good chances. And luckily enough, we took a couple of them. So, what numbers would you put on Pulisic, Mark, in terms of goals, assists for the upcoming season?
Depending on what you think Chelsea will do, or where we're going to end up in the league table, I think for us to have a real chance at top 4, I think he's going to have to score, say 6 goals, 6, 7, 8 assists, I would say. And then that's just in the Premier League, for us for me to feel that he's making some growth. And I think to make a real positive impact on this team, because, the biggest thing is how are we going to score goals? Where are these goals going to come from? Half our goals, created left to go to Real Madrid. So, obviously someone has to put it in the onion bag, but someone has to make that pass too. So we're going to need him to come in. We're going to need everybody. It's literally all hands on deck at this point.
No, yeah. For me, I think, if it's 6 goals, 8 assists, wow. I would love that from Pulisic.
Outdoing Willian's career here.
Hey, let's all back Willian. We're going to get a lot of hate now.
We're going to need 10 goals and 10 assists from him, to be honest with you.
Absolutely. You better have a blinder. Yeah. In terms of Pulisic, I think I've set a target that if he can get, 8 assists and 5 goals at least, I think that would be fantastic for me for first season in the Premier League, and we can sort of develop on that with many seasons to come. All right, let's move on to the next one, which is the double pivot conundrum. Now, we've seen in recent times Frank's default formation is 4-2-3-1. That's his, bread and butter. He does have the variation of 4-4-2 diamond, but that's his plan B, I feel like. And 4-3-3, I don't really see that being a plan for him at the moment. Perhaps maybe when Ruben Loftus-Cheek comes back, that could be something he may work on. But let's touch on the 4-2-3-1. We have seen so far Jorginho and Kova, and they've been the best at the moment in that formation. They've given us that dynamic sort of vibe in the middle. They press well. They build up very well. They're very good with the ball. Under pressure, they're press resistant, and they can easily control the ball and push it forward. And then without the ball, they press really well. We've seen Jorginho, how wonderful he was with the pressing on Busquets, how he sees that opportunity at least 2 plays ahead, and forces Busquets to make that mistake. And obviously, Tammy Abraham puts it away. But there is that other card, which is Kante, and he hasn't featured as yet. He's gone back from the Japan tour to recover, and is most likely going to feature in our upcoming matches. What's your thoughts on, I suppose, Kante, Jorginho, Kovacic, double pivot? What happens there? It's a good problem to have for Frank, but how do you feel about
it? If everyone's healthy, and as much as I love Jorginho as a player and just as a person on the pitch, it just seems anytime you see him, he's always laughing. He seems like he gets along with all the players. He's always barking instructions. He's always moving. But if we were going to play a double pivot, I think the best out of that, honestly, is a Kovacic Kante double pivot. It lacks offense, but for me, a 4-2-3-1, when you're playing it, those two generally are going to be more of your defensive, defenders. You can have a guy back there who's more of a passing and a creator, but that works better in a 3-man midfield. So, and there's always this giant debate about what's Kante's best position. And, if we're going to play a 2-man midfield, I think you have to include Kante regardless, even in a 3-man midfield. But that's his best. And I think a guy of Kovacic's skill would be great. And I want to see the double pivot. Now, for me, a 4-2-3-1 is more of a we're going to finish the game out type of formation. I don't think we have the number 10 to really play. I think with the wingers, and as much as we all love Eden, we know he doesn't track back as well. That's not in his game. With Pulisic and Willian, I think those guys tracking back would really make a difference in a 4-2-3-1. But for me, that's not the formation that I would go with. And I'm not a giant proponent of constantly switching formations either. I would rather stick with the 4-3-3. I think within that, you can go to a 4-2-3-1. You can go to a 4-4-2 diamond. I like that more as a base, and maybe he is waiting for ROC to get back, because I don't know how he's going to work as an out 10. I think he works better in a 3-man midfield. I think everyone works better in a 3-man midfield, probably other than Kante. So if I had to pick Man United, as hard as it is for me to leave Jorginho off the pitch because he's a warrior, I think if we're going to run a double pivot, the best combination is a Kante Kovacic.
Wow, man, that's massive. But I do understand it, because at the end of the day, Kante has won 2 Premier Leagues, 1 World Cup, FA Cup, all playing in the double pivot role. So we definitely can't disregard this man's strength, which is the double pivot. But I feel like, and it hurts me to say this, I feel Kovacic and Jorginho, when I look at our gameplay at the moment, and I see how Frank sets up, yes, it's high intensity, high press, but at the same time, he hasn't forgotten the fundamentals of last season either, which is build up from the back. And I feel players like Jorginho and Kovacic allows for that build up, allows for the defenders to pass the ball to them to then pass the ball back to the defenders, allows for all that nice intricate passing where I don't know if Kante's cut out for that. Yes, Kante's fantastic in that position in terms of when there is a transition. I feel like there were certain times against Barcelona we got caught out in transition. We pressed high, but Barcelona was just that much better in terms of passing it quickly. And then before you knew it, when our pressing didn't work out, these players of Barcelona created a 4-on-3, 5-on-4 situation very quickly. And obviously in those situations, a player like Kante can come in and help the defense out and break the play up, intercept, and then start a counter-attack, I suppose, off the back of that. And I do understand that is valuable as well. But in terms of passing ability, in terms of having the ability when you're getting pressed hard and to be able to take the ball out of your half successfully, Kovacic and Jorginho for me does it. It's a good point that you brought in terms of Man United, the first game. Now, Kante is still, it's not 100%. Obviously, Kovacic and Jorginho is probably, in terms of fitness, is a bit far ahead of him at the moment. But yeah, it'll be interesting if Frank, if Kante does put in some really good performances in the upcoming preseason games. Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting how we set up. You may be right, man, that he may go with Kante because we probably don't want to lose that game. At least we want to come out with a point. And it might be the best option to have Kante. And he's the perfect player in terms of counter-attack. And that could be the scenario against Man United. But nonetheless, it's a good problem to have for Frank, I feel. with all the different fixtures that we're going to have. We've got Champions League football, we've got all the fixtures in the Premier League, we've got all these domestic cups that we're going to be involved in. I feel they should all get minutes. What do you think, man? Like, at the end of the day, I feel like none of those players should be utterly upset. I feel they should all get minutes.
Definitely. A lot was made of last year and using the same players. And I think a lot of that really just goes back to trying to learn a system. I mean, I couldn't imagine Frank trying to come in and instill what he's doing now without, having a coach who tried to teach positional football like Sarri. I mean, I think it would be immensely difficult for Frank to come in and try to switch formations and play like Barcelona and try to play like how Jose played, which, has said are his influences. So, I think there'll definitely be plenty of game time to go around. People say, oh, everyone gets a clean slate and everyone gets a fresh start. That's easy to say, but when you lose two in a row, what is the manager going to do? He's going to lean back on the players that he thinks he can trust. Because once again, no matter who the person is, you cannot have a bad season at Chelsea and think it's just going to be okay. If we finish 14th, do I think Frank's going to come back automatically? No, I don't. Do I think the fans will turn on him? No, I don't. That's the fans aren't what I'm afraid of. It's more of the board. They're the ones who set these lofty expectations. So even the things that are going wrong aren't Frank's fault, he will be held accountable for these things. So he's going to do whatever he can to win games. So I think there's definitely plenty of time, of minutes to go around for every player.
For sure. Cool. I'm happy how we've covered that. Next up, Jorginho. Now, we still have certain fans in our fan base, even after a season has gone by, even after we've seen him so far in the preseason, and they still seem to have, a sort of pessimistic view on Jorginho. There's still every now and then those headlines from different articles saying, Jorginho now free of Sarri, the shackles are off now. People are still, every time they hear the word register, they get the biggest cringe feeling. Man, how can we try and decipher this, in the most respectful manner, I suppose, because I know you're very pro Jorginho. I'm very pro Jorginho as well. But let's really look at this, in a subjective, objective way, I suppose, and try and see if we can decipher what is exactly Jorginho's role and what he does. I think people get confused that he's a DM. To me, he's not. He's more of a ball playing. He's a ball playing midfielder, a bit of a playmaker from the back. And the defensive qualities, yes, he has to improve, but that's not his predominant role. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at a guy like him, he there's nothing about him that screams world class when you look at him. He's not overly big. He's not overly fast. He's not the strongest player. Where he excels is in his head. He's constantly moving. He can see the play happen 2 or 3, plays before. And, people say, oh, he made a 5-yard pass and the sorry virgins are creaming. But when you look at the game and you see how he sets up a defender and how he's just constantly moving, he's basically there to just keep the ball moving, when you're playing in a possession-based system. Now, you don't always have to have a quote-unquote regista. You don't always have to have a deep-lying playmaker, but he brings so much, even without Sarri. So, I don't think what he does is something that you see very often in the Premier League. So I think for people who generally watch other leagues, who watch more of Serie A or just other leagues, you tend to see these type of players more, as to where the EPL is really just is a lot more based on speed and strength. So, I think Jorginho got a bad rap because, he would get caught out of position or he would get stuck on the ball. Jorginho, nothing about him screams world class. But if he's in a team and they're playing as a team, Jorginho is world class. So for me, when the team plays better, it looks like Jorginho plays better. He's the same player all the time. Of course, people can improve and they can, learn different things. But Jorginho was the same player from the beginning to the end of the season. What changed was how the team performed around him. And he's just an ultimate team player.
Well said, man. Absolutely well said. You're right. It's so easy to, when the team isn't performing well, it's so easy to sort of point the finger at him. But as you said, in essence, he is still what he's doing. It just makes it look like as if it's him who's letting the team down. When in essence, it's not really him. It's the whole team around him that's not understanding the role that they need to do to basically play out what Sarri was intending to do last season. But at the same time, similarly, if it looks like Frank is a fan of Jorginho as well, and he may not use him the same way as Sarri is probably using, but the fundamentals of it is still there. So, as you said, he's barking orders, he's directing players. If some of these players are not performing their role adequately, it may sort of look like it's Jorginho that's not playing well, but when in essence that's not the case. He requires players around him to move around, which then makes his role a lot more effective. What's your thoughts on in regards to there's a lot of there's a lot of talk at the moment going on. Hazard used to take the penalties. And at the moment we don't have a set player. Would you like to see Jorginho perhaps take penalties for us with the classic way that he does, the skip?
I love it. I think he's a player who can handle pressure, and I love the little hot move. Everyone loved it until it didn't work in the League Cup final, and then he was the worst penalty taker ever. But I commend the guy. That takes a lot of cojones to step up there and do that. I got to give it to him.
Absolutely, man. I wouldn't mind seeing him, but I just hope that he doesn't get predictable with that hop, that he does mix it up every now and then, and keeps the keepers guessing. What about future captaincy? I've recently tweeted that he's got the characteristics of being a leader, a captain. Would you probably like to see him be Chelsea's captain down the track? Once Azpilicueta probably, let's go off that.
Yeah, definitely. One thing we always hear is this team lacks leaders. They lack players that want to play for the badge, and that's the strange thing about Jorginho, because he's the type of player that plays for the badge. He goes out there and gives 100%. So I would love to see him as a captain. I think he would like it. I think that he's well respected in the locker room, and when he came out and said the things that, I'm looking forward to playing under Frank, and, Sarri was my coach, not my friend. And people took that as, well, they don't have a great relationship. I think he was just trying to make the point that, him and I worked together, and yes, we were friends, well, maybe outside of football, or they liked the same type of things, that, when it came to it, Jorginho plays because Jorginho's a good player. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't mind it at all for him to be the captain at all.
No, absolutely. I think that would be an iconic moment. A player that's been booed at Stamford Bridge and then wearing the armband. I think that football Twitter would absolutely blow up. Pictures would go left, right, and center of him putting the armband on. Let's now touch on the final bit before we end up our fantastic show today. Nicolas Pepe, obviously words going around that it's quite imminent that he's going to sign for Arsenal. When did you first hear it, I suppose? What was your thoughts? How did you feel about it? I had no idea. I woke up in the morning and as I always do, just quickly check football Twitter when I wake up. And I saw news of Nicolas Pepe all over football Twitter, and I'm not going to lie, man. I'm not going to lie. I was a little bit cut because I thought the player really wanted to come to Chelsea, and I thought he'll stick it out for another year at Lille. And perhaps he's one of those wingers that we signed next season with Willian and Pedro aging, obviously. And my younger brother, he's a massive Arsenal fan. He's WhatsApped me this morning and he's like, "Thought we had a budget of 45 mil. Ha 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 ha. We've got Nicolas Pepe now." I'm like, "Oh, you little shit." So yeah, talk me through your feelings.
Yeah. So I found out this morning. I woke up, and I listened to the radio on my phone. It helps me sleep at night. So usually the first thing I do when I wake up is turn the radio off for my alarm. And I swiped down to see my notifications, and it said something from ESPN, and I was just like, I was shocked. There was a lot of talk about Zaha, and of course, their transfer budget, and Pepe was a player that I really liked. He stated that he would like to play for Chelsea. Once the season was over, I kind of, even though we had a ban, I started to look at some of these players because it's really easy on football Twitter to get swept up in, watching just highlights. And, I like to watch other leagues, but, there's only so many hours in the day. So I really went back and watched him. And I think he would fit really in a team that was Chelsea maybe 3 or 4 years ago. He's really much more of a counter-attacking player. But he's fairly young, so it's not saying that he couldn't adjust. But I think that there are other players who would fit a more possession style more than he would. For Arsenal, I mean, hey, I'm not sure why they would really need another attacking player. Unless Pepe is going to play center back, I still see them having a lot of the same issues that they had last year. I think their back line is more, but their strike force is amazing when you think of them maybe even playing in a 4-4-2 or whatever with, you have the two strikers and then maybe Ozil or Mkhitaryan, and then you have the possible winger combination. I mean, it can be really exciting, but they're going to have to win their matches 6-4 because they didn't do anything to improve the defensive phase.
I like that. There was a lot. Look, ever since I saw reports of him, now being imminent to Arsenal, I'm trying to find every reason not to like this player now. I'm trying to figure out ways to hate this guy, and I'm trying to get on the bandwagon of every post that is against him. And I must say though, he's been playing in the French league, and I saw some of his clips on Football Twitter and also in YouTube, and I've seen some of his matches last season as well. He was given a hell of a lot of space, and some of those centre backs in the French league, wow, they were quite embarrassing. And he's not going to get that amount of space and time and that level of defenders in the Premier League. Premier League has some brutal defenders, so that's going to be interesting for me to see. What does he do when that much time and space is not given? Is he still the same player that we think that he is, or does he get limited? It'll be interesting to see. But as you said, Arsenal with that strike power of Lacazette and Aubameyang, and you include now Pepe into that mix, whew, that's some scary speed. They could move the ball around pretty quickly. Would you have him in your fantasy Premier League team by any chance?
I guess it would just depend on what his price would be. I don't play anymore. I used to play.
Damn.
But
Come on.
I guess it would just. I tell you, the one reason I quit playing fantasy is I don't know if it's still this way, but the way the last time it was is that when you set your lineup, once that first match plays, you cannot adjust your lineup at all anymore. So, say if I pick Eden Hazard to captain my team on Sunday, and the first match is on a Friday, if he gets hurt or something, I can't switch him out after the first match is played. Now, I knew it'll do it automatically for you, but that really upset me. So I said, I'm going to take a leave of absence from Fantasy Premier League until they allow you to manipulate the lineup once the first match is started. Now, if you have a guy that's playing in that first match, I completely understand it. I don't know if you've ever played fantasy football for American football, but you have up until basically kickoff of a game that a player's playing in it to adjust it. So I'm hoping that the Fantasy Premier League can catch up to that.
That's a good point. Just to on your point of what does Fantasy Premier League do? They definitely don't have that option as yet. They're still that classic style where as soon as the first game starts, that's it. It's locked in, baby. And if from there, if your player who you've captained somehow gets injured in training or whatnot, or just pulls out, it'll be the automatic. Well, you do have the option of selecting a vice captain. So whoever's your vice captain then ends up getting the captaincy. So it's still in that same manner. But yeah, hopefully they can take out some leaf off the NFL style of fantasy, because I do like this where you can change things around. But yeah, nonetheless, Marc, it's been a fantastic episode. I feel like we've got a lot of good information. Hopefully our listeners get a lot out of it as well. Before we go, do you want to do any plugs? Do you want to promote anything? Do you want to say anything to your followers? This is your time.
Well, first of all, Miz, I just want to say thank you again for having me on. I love being on your show. I love watching your videos. I love the insightful information that you give. One thing that's always been is that, what we learn is basically what has been fed to us. And, for the longest time, there was only a few outlets. So one thing that I love about social media is that people have a voice. There's more than one way to get information. And, whether I agree with someone, I do agree with the ability for them to say what they say. And people say, well, why do you say it? The club's never going to see it, or this. And then what's the point of writing articles or doing anything that we do? It's all about being a fan and how you express that. So I appreciate what you do. And really, I'm just excited for the season. The way things ended last year, and our former coach leaving, and the ban, everything was really pessimistic. And there was a while there, I was really down about the whole season, but the more I've gotten to see, and it seems more of Sarri wanting to go, and maybe that the club is changing. And I have all the faith in Frank. I know for sure that Frank will become a top manager one day. It's just more of, will it be here and will it be right now? So, regardless, I have no real expectations for the season. I just am going to be really happy to put on that kit and get up at 7:00 in the morning and quietly scream for 2 hours and then get the rest of my day going. So just up the Chelsea, really.
Brilliant, man. Brilliant. Well, once again, thank you so much for taking your time and coming to my channel. Please do, if you can, to your followers, to get them to subscribe to my channel. That'd be fantastic. And hopefully we have you on in the upcoming season. I'm sure we're going to have you on even more, and cannot wait to keep talking footy with you. So have a very, very good night, Marc. And to all our followers, to my followers especially, please, if you haven't followed Marc as yet, please follow him. I will put all the information about his Twitter handle in this particular video. Go ahead and follow him. He's got some nice quirky posts every now and then, so get a good laugh out of that. Everyone have a very good absolutely, man. All right, so everyone have a very, very good day, and thank you so much. See ya.
Have a good one, Miss.